What would happen if an owner returned to his own store and discovered it was being run like an underground organization controlled by his trusted employees? That morning, Lucas Reed parked his car a block away from his own grocery store, Harvest and Hearth. From across the street, he quietly observed the storefront that had once been a symbol of the entire neighborhood. Now too quiet, too lifeless. The place where 15 years ago he had stacked every bag of rice and hung every price tag now felt like a stranger. No more long lines of early morning customers, no familiar greetings. Everything was strangely silent. Lucas pulled his beanie lower, adjusted his faded gray hoodie, clothing he hadn't worn since managing the store chain at the regional level. But today he wasn't here as the owner. He was a stranger, a silent customer, and someone seeking the truth. Stepping through the heavy glass door, the small bell above chimed like a silent warning. The smell of freshly ground coffee and toasted bread lingered, but no longer brought the warmth it once did. Early sunlight slanted through the large windows, casting long shadows on the polished tile floor, as if exposing every dark corner of a seemingly perfect space. Customers were sparse, employees busy but unhurried. On the surface, everything seemed fine. But Lucas knew better than anyone. The numbers never lie. Last night, he had lost sleep reviewing every inventory report, every sales report. Revenue hadn't dropped, but profits were plummeting. The reasons given by management sounded plausible. Probably due to rising input costs or consumers cutting back on spending. But Lucas hadn't built a store chain from scratch just to accept easy excuses. He moved deeper into the familiar aisles, pretending to search for a familiar cereal. Every step, every glance was deliberate, nothing suspicious, until his eyes landed on a corner of the notice board near the employee room. A small handwritten note carelessly taped with old tape. Camera on aisle 3 malfunctioning, temporarily out of service. Lucas's heart skipped a beat. A technical fault, coinciding exactly with the area where missing inventory had been reported last month. His hand clenched inside his jacket pocket, his chest tightening with a smoldering premonition. Someone was abusing his trust, and he had returned just in time to witness it all. Lucas quietly moved toward the checkout counter, choosing a spot close enough to observe without drawing attention. In front of him was Ben, the longtime merchandise manager, wearing a slightly wrinkled dark red jacket, working with a regular customer. The customer, Mark, was a calm, familiar man in his 40s. Lucas had seen him at local fairs, even once invited him for coffee at a store opening. But what made Lucas frown wasn't the man himself, but how Ben operated the cash register. His fingers moved swiftly and decisively as if he had done this thousands of times. On the screen, the temporary total showed $134.75. But in a blink, a series of quick taps appeared and vanished. The total dropped to $72.10. No coupons, no discount codes, no loyalty points were scanned. Ben simply smiled lightly and half-joked, "Regular customer, special preferential price." Mark laughed without questioning, pulled out his wallet, paid in cash, and left as if this was perfectly normal. Lucas clenched the newspaper in his hand, pretending to focus on the market news section. But inside, a spark was kindling. This wasn't just price manipulation, it was a system. A secret agreement had been established, and the man in front of him, Ben, was more than an employee. He was someone Lucas had trusted enough to grant full access to all merchandise in the store's west wing. Last year, when Ben's daughter was hospitalized with a rare illness, Lucas personally approved emergency funds from the company's relief fund, overriding protocol. Today, that same person was quietly siphoning coins from the very system that had once saved him. What stunned Lucas was not the financial loss, but the utter nonchalance. No one around seemed surprised. No one spoke, as if the secret discount was a common thing, a tacit norm among insiders, a system built on trust, being exploited by those who had been entrusted with it. Lucas picked up a bottle of juice from the shelf, walked slowly toward the back of the store, eyes never leaving Ben, the man who just tucked the receipt into the drawer without printing it for the customer. Everything was running according to a different script, a script that Lucas, the owner, had never been invited to join. And in this game, Lucas realized he was no longer the one in control. He was the one being watched. Lucas pretended to check the production dates on a few cereal boxes, but in reality, his gaze was fixed on the checkout counter to his left. Shortly after, another regular customer arrived. Clara, the owner of a small bakery just 3 blocks away. Her shopping basket was filled with high-value items: organic baking flour, imported brown sugar, and a variety of expensive nuts used for toppings. Lucas frowned, wondering how such a small bakery could regularly purchase these costly ingredients while maintaining competitive prices. The answer came quickly when the total on the screen jumped to $148, then swiftly dropped to $81. No explanation was given, and no receipt was printed. Clara paid in cash, smiling brightly. "I don't know how to thank you all enough. Without this place's help, my bakery would have closed months ago." Ben returned the smile, his voice soft like the wind. "Your family. Family always gets family prices." Lucas felt a strange chill in his heart. Those sincere words of gratitude in another context might have been a testament to community solidarity. But at this moment, they felt like a sharpened blade polished by complicity. A form of misguided loyalty, a favor based on exploitation. Everything seemed to be operated by an underground network. No paperwork, no records, but a full set of rules and a system of privileges. What made Lucas even more wary was Ben's quick glance toward the camera after completing the transaction, as if checking whether anyone was watching. That camera angle was the very one reported broken last month. Lucas had requested repairs then, but the maintenance request disappeared without a trace. He stepped back toward the display case near the bakery counter, pretending to browse. From his hidden vantage point, he began observing the staff computers. Next to the main POS machine was an old computer fitted with an external hard drive. No one paid attention to it. No one touched it all morning, yet its power light silently glowed. Lucas realized this was likely the hub of covert adjustments, an unofficial software, only visible at certain hours, used to hide the true numbers. His eyes caught the moment Ben quietly exchanged a brief look with Sarah, the shift supervisor whom Lucas had once trusted completely. They made eye contact for just a few seconds, nodded, then Sarah disappeared into the storage room. Everything was too smooth, too normal. The entire operation was running like a well-oiled machine, protected by familiarity and distorted loyalty. And Lucas, who once believed he had built a family, now stood outside, watching a growing crack spread wide open. Lucas never imagined the day would come when he would begin to suspect Sarah Harper. She was one of the first employees, building the store alongside him when it was still a small warehouse with a few shaky shelves. She had helped design the inventory process and stayed up late nights reviewing the new stock system. Yet this morning, she had become a key link in the underground network Lucas could no longer ignore. He saw her come out of the storage room holding a familiar clipboard, but instead of the usual inventory list, what she left behind after a brief meeting with Ben was a thin file and a wary glance at the camera array before she left. Lucas waited until she disappeared, then approached. In the trash bin nearby, he found a torn inventory slip. Its top half clearly marked organic coffee batch, damaged, unsellable, 4 packs. His heart pounded. Just the other day, he had seen those coffee packs neatly stacked on the shelf, and this morning, half were gone. On the system, they were recorded as damaged goods, meaning they were removed from the total inventory value and not counted as revenue. A perfect cover, up, and the one behind it was Sarah herself. Lucas silently stepped back, leaning lightly against the hallway wall, feeling as if a part of his cherished memories had been taken away. He recalled a meeting months ago when Sarah advised upgrading the system to erase logs monthly. To free memory, she said, to reduce lag. Now it all made sense. She had exploited that trust to implant gaps only an insider would know. She wasn't just abusing the system. She had redesigned it to serve a collective wrongdoing. When Lucas returned to the central area, he accidentally caught Sarah standing near the register, talking with Ben. They both smiled lightly as a customer received a friendly discount, but what Lucas couldn't forget was her whispered words. Remember to space out the overrides. Don't cluster too many in the same shift. It flags easily. The boss trusts us, but don't get careless. Boss, a word once filled with familial warmth in this small family, now sounded like a cruel joke. Lucas turned away, his chest feeling tightly squeezed. If even Sarah had betrayed him, who in this store was truly loyal? He had no choice left. It was time to expose the entire web of lies. And he knew to do that, he needed more evidence. What he had seen today was just the surface. Beneath it lay a whole system, and he would have to reach its roots. That night, Lucas returned home without sleep. Instead of resting, he connected his computer to the store's internal management system, the platform he had invested in upgrading last year to improve efficiency and data transparency. Sarah was the one who proposed this platform, and she was also the one who requested the feature to automatically delete transaction logs every 30 days. At that time, he had no suspicion. Now it was different. Immediately after logging in, Lucas filtered data by specific time frames. Those exact moments when he had witnessed unusual transactions firsthand. And then, like ink spreading on white paper, the truth gradually emerged. A series of transactions during shifts worked by Ben, Sarah, and Julie, a warehouse staff member, shared a common pattern. High-end products like organic coffee, premium frozen meats, and imported cleaning supplies were sold at deep discounts, but without any discount codes applied. Some transactions were split into two parts, one part canceled after entry and re-entered at a lower unit price. Some transactions didn't even appear in the revenue summary, instead recorded as returned goods or damaged. But those items, they disappeared from the warehouse and never came back. Lucas opened the inventory report module and a chill ran down his spine. At the same time as these covert discount transactions, a large number of damaged items were recorded, matching exactly the products Lucas had seen being handed to regular customers. None of the items were actually damaged. They were simply written off to vanish from the system. He then opened the Administration Access Log module. On the screen appeared an internal email. Sarah H. harvesthearth.com. She was the one who scheduled system inventory adjustments for next week, precisely at the time when the periodic update would erase old logs. What struck Lucas like a final blow was when he realized that all shifts with suspicious transactions were scheduled so that one of them, Ben, Sarah, Julie, or Tom from the warehouse, was always present. A linked chain, never leaving a shift without control. A coincidentally broken camera on aisle 3, a staff-only computer placed outside the monitored area, handwritten inventory reports instead of direct system entries. Lucas no longer had doubts. These were no longer petty individual acts. This was an underground organization. A sophisticated system built right inside his store. The place once symbolizing kindness. Tomorrow, the system would automatically delete the previous month's data. If he didn't act now, the evidence would vanish. Lucas clicked Export Full Report, his hand trembling with every beat, his heart pounding fiercely. He knew this would be a confrontation not only to save profits, but to reclaim the soul of the entire community he had painstakingly built. The next morning, precisely at 8 o'clock, Lucas Reed stepped through the doors of Harvest and Hearth, no longer wearing his faded gray hoodie, but in a sharp black suit, his hair neatly combed, his eyes betraying no hesitation. He carried a thick file containing all the evidence he had quietly gathered over the past 48 hours. When Sarah looked up from the counter, her usual professional smile faltered midway, her eyes flicking briefly toward Ben. The atmosphere in the store suddenly grew heavy, as if everyone sensed something was coming. Emergency meeting, head office. In 15 minutes, Lucas said calmly but with weight. Ben, Sarah, Julie, Tom, Jake, I need you all there. When all the staff gathered in the meeting room, the place where they once shared birthday cakes, signed congratulatory cards, and drafted development plans. Today, the mood was entirely different, silent, cold. Lucas placed the file in the center of the table. He began not with anger, but disappointment. I once believed treating employees like family would build loyalty, but yesterday I learned some people use that trust to build their own system. He opened the first page. Ben's altered receipts. Who can explain why this item was sold at 60% of the listed price, without any discount code scanned? No one spoke. Sarah lowered her head. Julie clenched her sleeve. Tom stared out the window. Lucas continued, presenting evidence one by one. Images from the backup hard drive, copies of altered data, transactions matching the times of camera outages. Then he stopped at a blank form, a police report pre-filled with the title, Internal Fraud Organization at Harvest and Hearth. "I haven't submitted this yet," Lucas said, "but I will, if no one comes forward to explain." Silence. Then Jake, the youngest employee, broke down in tears. "I only did it twice. I thought it was normal. Sarah said everyone did it." The confession ignited everything. Julie bit her lip, then spoke. "At first it was just helping regular customers, but it got out of hand. I didn't touch the warehouse, but I know what's going on." Sarah said nothing. Ben still hung his head, his face flushed red. Lucas stood tall, voice steady. "Jake, you're suspended for 2 weeks, retrained from scratch, and supervised for 6 months. One more mistake, and you're out." He turned to Julie. 1 month suspension, then return as inventory supervisor. Then, eyes on Ben and Tom. "You two, leave the store immediately. Your salaries will be calculated after deducting caused losses." Finally, he faced Sarah. The former right hand, the person he had trusted most. "Sarah, you didn't just manipulate the system. You led an organization designing mechanisms to deceive me and our customers. I'm not just firing you, I'm suing." As security appeared, Sarah broke down crying, but Lucas did not flinch. Trust cannot be rebuilt with tears. It can only be restored through consequences. After that confrontation, Harvest and Hearth was no longer just a store. It became a shattered construction site where every gaze held unspoken silences. The remaining staff, mostly those who had been silent or on the sidelines, now faced an environment stripped of any illusions about family or closeness. Lucas understood this. He didn't expect gratitude from anyone. The only thing he needed now was a new culture, not based on sentiment or familiarity, but on principles, discipline, and truth. And to achieve that, he could not hesitate. The very next morning, Lucas implemented a series of changes. Every transaction would be backed up twice, both in data and images. All cameras were upgraded to an automatic behavior recognition system, capable of alerting suspicious transactions the moment they occurred. The warehouse was scheduled for regular inspections by an independent audit firm, and the entire shift roster was reorganized using an algorithm to prevent staff overlap. No more groups used to working together. These changes were not easy. Some employees showed tension, others cold indifference. But Lucas stood firm. He was no longer the owner wanting to be loved. He was the one who had to save this place. Some regular customers began to speak up as the special discounts they had quietly enjoyed disappeared. A man who had previously received a 50% discount from Ben on a large order entered with displeasure and bluntly said, "The old prices were much better." Lucas smiled, looking him straight in the eye. "The old prices were not transparent. Now every customer is equal, even me." The man fell silent but did not turn away, and that was exactly what Lucas hoped for. What surprised Lucas was the reaction from the community itself. Those who had once benefited from unofficial favors were now the first to understand. Clara, the bakery owner, came to him one afternoon holding a small order form. "I know I inadvertently helped," she said, looking him in the eye. "But if paying the right price is what it takes for this store to operate transparently, then I'm willing." Step by step, transaction by transaction, Harvest and Hearth began to operate again. No more loud laughter in the break room. No more exchanged glances with secret codes. Instead, there was focused silence, regular cross, checks, and short pre-shift meetings with clear goals. And then, in that seemingly cold atmosphere, Lucas began to realize trust was returning. It was not through vows, but through actions. Not by emotions, but by structure. True trust must be built with bricks, not mist. 6 months after the underground storm was exposed, Harvest and Hearth stood proudly on the street as if it had never been stabbed in the back. But Lucas knew well, nothing would ever return to the way it was. The cracks in trust, once formed, would never fully heal. They no longer bled, but they smoldered. A reminder that the most precious thing in an organization is not goods, nor revenue, but the trust between people. In his office, Lucas flipped through the latest quarterly financial report. The numbers were clear and clean, without anomalies: steady revenue, recovering profits, and unprecedentedly low shrinkage rates. But it wasn't the numbers that made him smile. It was the customer feedback, for the first time in years. Praising staff for professionalism, not unusual discounts. It was partnership offers from new collaborators who had once been wary due to the store's too lenient reputation. Jake, the young employee who had cried during the fateful meeting, was now sitting in the control room monitoring the day's largest transactions. He was the one who proposed the creation of the Internal Ethical Alert Policy, a system allowing employees to anonymously report suspicious behavior. Julie, once silent, was now an assistant manager responsible for training new staff. She organized the first group discussion on honest culture after the crisis. Lucas had thought only supervision and technology could save trust, but it turned out there were people willing to admit mistakes and brave enough to start anew. Some new employees joined without knowing what had happened. To them, Harvest and Hearth was simply a store with strict processes and clear management. They had no idea about the days when the checkout was a front for covert deals or the storage room held forged reports. And Lucas didn't tell them. Not to hide, but because he wanted the store not only to survive a fall, but truly grow from it. That afternoon, he walked around the store, touching the dust, free glass, adjusting price tags, then stopping before the wooden frame holding the first dollar the store ever earned. He had added a small metal plate beneath it, engraved with the words, "Trust does not take root on its own. It must be nurtured, guarded, and dared to be paid for." It was not a slogan. It was a vow to himself. Late at night, Lucas stepped out of the store, watching the light inside filtering through the glass. No more shadowy figures behind the counter, no one glancing at cameras, only people working. For real. And in that normalcy, Lucas knew he had done the right thing. In business, trust is an asset not recorded in ledgers. But once lost, the cost paid far exceeds any profit once made. Lucas's story is not just a lesson in management, but a reminder that kindness, when unchecked, can be exploited, while transparency, even when uncomfortable, is the strongest foundation for any organization. If you believe a team is truly strong only when built on honesty, please like this video, subscribe to avoid missing more awakening stories like this, and don't forget to leave a comment with the phrase "Keep Trust" if you resonate with Lucas's choice.